not a dividend.
It's a tale of two clans.
Now, your losses are on someone else's balance sheet.
Generally speaking, airdrops are kind of pointless anyways.
Unnamed trading firms who are very involved.
I like that ETH is the ultimate Ponzi.
DeFi protocols are the antidote to this problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple of weeks, the four of us get together and give the industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So, quick intros. First, we've got Tom, the DeFi maven and master of memes.
Hello.
Then we've got Robert, the crypto connoisseur and captain of Compound.
GM, everybody.
Wait, sorry. Czar of Superstate. Sorry. Czar of Superstate. Then we've got Tarun, the Gigabrain and Grand Poobah at Gauntlet.
Hello.
Very creative. And I'm Haseeb, the head hype man at Dragonfly. So we are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, or even life advice. Please see choppingblock.xyz for more disclosure.
Can I start with a disclosure? I'm not drinking a Red Bull, not because I'm cheating on Red Bull. It's just like I forgot to bring one, and there happened to be Celsius at this podcast studio, which is great, but not Red Bull.
I can't touch anything with the name Celsius.
I just figured
my
I had
fingers
to
start trembling when I see the
I had to
name.
point it out because I know someone on Twitter will comment on it.
Yeah, honestly, I was about to call you out. I'm like, dude, we're losing the sponsorship money really fast the moment you start drinking that.
Celsius, if you get out of bankruptcy court.
We're ready.
Celsius stock is actually ripping. Not the crypto Celsius, the drink Celsius. Yeah, it's crazy. Americans love energy drinks, straight up.
Well, Monster Energy is actually one of the most successful stocks of the last 5 years or whatever.
There you go.
And what was the one that IPO'd, that water with liquid death?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That was ridiculous.
That went public?
That went public.
Huh.
Yeah. It's, I don't really get it. So, interestingly, some people who know me know this, but I only drink water. And so a lot of people, especially when I got into crypto and there's a lot of money being thrown around and stuff, people would try to get me gifts. And a lot of common gifts is like, oh, you get something like a really fancy alcohol. And so people are like, oh, you don't drink. Like, what can I get you? And so people would try to get me really rare water. So it's like, oh, this water was bottled in Switzerland and it's got this super fancy. I'm just,
there is
I can't taste it. I don't know.
The whole non-alcoholic spirit industry now, which makes non-alcoholic tequila and non-alcoholic, they're meant to taste like it's a very weird.
I don't see the attraction.
Yeah, I can't think of anything worse than tequila without alcohol.
Yeah, that sounds like actively the wrong way to go.
A lot of them are just basically melatonin plus because they're meant as sleep aids for people who are trying to drink less, but they want they use drinking to sleep.
Wait, do people drink tequila as a sleep aid?
I'm just giving you the pitch from these people. I can't really relate to the users. Got it.
Well, somehow I am not in the target market for liquid death, even though I only drink water. But I'm just just get regular bottled water. Anyway.
No sparkling?
I do sparkling water as well. So that's when I'm trying to be fun. I will get sparkling water.
Would you do Celsius?
Haseeb on the loose.
I know, that's when I'm really getting wild. I'll get sparkling water, maybe a lemon if I'm really feeling spicy. But yeah, anyway.
So on the unhinged scale, you're a 1.1.
The unhinged scale. Okay, hold on. Robert, you got to introduce the unhinged scale. I forgot about this.
Okay, so backstage on the chopping block, we are marinating over a new metric. And the metric is actually to quantify the personality types of different participants in the crypto ecosystem. And it's actually called the Unhinged scale. And it really ranges from completely hinged to completely unhinged. And it's measured in standard deviations. And so one of the things that we were talking about was trying to measure different people. And there's not a formal framework for this yet. I think in the next couple of weeks, we might be releasing something for public comment and analysis on the actual mechanics of this. But to give you some basic color, SBF is probably the most unhinged that we've seen in our industry. He would probably be 6 standard deviations of unhinged. So that would be pretty much as high as you can go.
Where's Doe?
Doe, probably a 5.
You put him below. I was kind of curious of the relative
Definitely
difference.
below.
Yeah, definitely below.
No, I just want, I don't have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah, most people in crypto, I think by default, started about a 1, simply because you have to be, a little bit more out there than the, complete median American just to be in the industry at large. But within that, you have people like myself and Haseeb that probably score pretty low. And, what we're trying to do is come up with a framework that the public at large can use, to joke around about, how unhinged.
Okay, let's do some Rorschach tests.
Who's the most hinged? If it's from SBF to who?
Ooh, in the whole
Who's
industry.
-6 deviation?
-6.
But wasn't it
Negative
supposed to be Barry Silbert until recently?
Definitely not. It does not appear so. No,
He's like a 4.5, I think.
yeah. But he was a 4.5 dressing as a 1.
Who's
yeah.
the most hinged.
Maybe Jeremy Allaire.
Jeremy Allaire.
Yeah.
If ever been to like a
he's quite
simple
hinged.
prezo, it's just like it's straight business.
He's quite hinged.
Yeah, he's like a 0, I think.
Yeah. Or Katie Hawn. Katie Hawn's very hinged.
0.2.
But the weird part
Yeah.
about this definition is like it's ranking the number of standard deviations. If I'm 0 standard deviations, I'm just at the mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should
that's
be-
true.
it
That's
should
true.
be
Yeah, there should be
-6.
-6.
Yeah, yeah,
Negative
yeah.
6.
Oh, I mean, no, I think even working in the industry you can't be -6. Like,
I see. You're saying you have to have some level of unhinged tolerance, so you have to be at least the mean of the population hingedness.
I think you
All right, fine,
absolutely.
I'll-
I think
Negative
it's,
one.
theoretically there are -6s, but they don't work in crypto.
I haven't seen him.
That's like the Amish, that's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
-6. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They seem a little unhinged to me.
Yeah, actually, no, fair enough.
You're not going to listen to this podcast, so you can talk shit.
Rama is pretty base. You know?
That is true. That is true. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. That's more like very socially conservative as opposed to unhinged.
Yeah.
All right, but you were giving out rankings for the 4 of us
Yes.
on the hinge scale.
Wait. Let's do a few others. Vitalik.
I mean, I think, okay, there's situations where I'd be like, oh, that's a 3, and situations where I'm like, I don't know, there's something wrong. Like he's -2.
What is -2 about Vitalik?
He's too chill sometimes.
Ah,
Like in the face of like being as close to a celebrity as it gets in the industry, like how down to earth he is and how like,
But that's good.
yeah, that sounds unhinged.
like a good
that sounds like an unhinged kind of
no,
attribute.
I think it's pretty hinged.
I mean, that was also what SBF did, and that seemed also
Yeah,
quite
but
unhinged when SBF was
so
doing
obviously fake. Like if you
That's true.
if you talked to him for 5 seconds in person, it was like kind of.
that. No, but I mean, his indifference to celebrity seemed quite unhinged,
Oh yeah, but you know,
which is what you're
but
talking about with
Vitalik wasn't going
Vitalik.
trying to get built.
Yeah,
in.
Vitalik has a real indifference. I
Yeah.
think SBF had an illusionary.
Yeah, I think even in the book they were talking about the Corolla thing.
The
He
Corolla
played
thing was
like an
fake.
act. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's like, hey,
Yeah, but there's a story about Anna Wintour where he's like, who is this? I don't really care who this person is. Like, whatever, I'm playing my League of Legends, whatever.
I know the Michael Kives thing was all clearly like he invested in that fund just to like meet celebrities. Come on,
Yeah.
Vitalik. Was,
Yes, but in a not because they're celebrities, but because they're useful to his other.
I would say Vitalik is more unhinged for reasons like he likes drinking green tea and red wine.
Yeah,
that shit is unhinged. That shit is unhinged to me. That
agree,
combo is like fucking
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I'd say I like the 3. I'd buy the 3. Okay, who else? Let's do some other.
Who else?
Anatoly.
He's
More hinged.
Normal.
I
Yeah.
think he's more hinged.
quite hinged.
He's probably
He's
like
very reasonable.
like
1.5.
one.
Yeah, 1.5, 2.
Yeah, 1.5.
That's right.
Arthur Hayes.
Oh, he's up there. I mean, he's in the 4 camp.
Okay.
Yeah, he's intense.
Brian
He's
Armstrong.
an intense guy.
Brian, I'd put lower, maybe 2.
He loves crazy longevity stuff, so you got to give him a little bit of
Yeah, but if you normalize
Standard
for SF,
deviation.
if you normalize for SF, I think he's like a 1.
yeah, but like I mean that's still okay.
Each standard deviation gets harder and harder
That's true.
to achieve, and
Yeah.
there's less and less people there.
Yeah.
Who else are we?
That's true.
Who else is worth kind of?
CZ.
I mean, it's got to be pretty high.
I feel like a public appearance is like a 2, but like reality is like a 5. You know what I mean? Like he like tries really hard to have like a very hinged appearance, but like I don't know. It's got to be the craziest business in the world to be running, right?
That is true. Yeah, it is true. And he's been on the run and more or less itinerant for like the last decade of his life.
Yeah, he's got to be 4.5.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, we're going to be releasing the actual framework for this in the future.
Yes.
You make sure you comment and tell us how much.
Yes, we'll have
how much you
a
disagree.
comment period. We're gonna obey all the rules unlike the SEC.
And the real question you should be asking everyone is like, how the fuck are these 4 people working in crypto? And instead of suggesting just a prediction market for this thing, they somehow are like giving people single grades. Shame on us.
So, in the spirit, give us a single grades. I think you reiterated them on our dinner the other night.
For us,
For us, 4 of us.
I think Tarun, what were you, a 3?
Yeah.
Wait, Tarun is a 3?
Yeah. I mean, he has purple hair. That adds some points right away.
Yeah. I say that surprised that it's that low.
Oh, wow. Well,
Oh, yeah. I think
Okay.
it's that low.
Tarun's a 3. All right.
Tarun's a
Who else
3.
was a 3?
So Haseeb might appear to be a 1.5,
Uh huh.
but nobody has argued more vehemently that they should be ranked higher than Haseeb, which led me to believe that the number had to be higher than initially perceived. So I think Haseeb is also at 3, and Tom and I are.
You think I'm double?
Yeah.
Well, it's not really.
Wait, hold on. You think I'm as unhinged as Tarun?
It's not really double, right? Because if it's normally distributed, it's 95.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's
It's only
true.
4.7%.
Okay, fine.
Sorry,
fine.
just to be.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Very unhinged.
Yeah, the
thing to
fact
note.
that you live in Seattle
Okay.
stretches the number.
Okay.
Stretches?
Yeah.
Seattle's like the most normcore place in the
Yeah,
world.
it is kind of. Yeah, exactly.
It's like
I think
so
this is true.
normcore. In fact, I
think
think it pulls you down.
But the normcore is like it's specifically it's affected, right? It's like you're not actual normal. You're like pretending to be normal, which is the choice of living in Seattle. So I think that actually to Robert's credit kind of supports the idea.
I don't know. I feel like Seattle is like a place people go to retire. Yeah.
Right, which is why if you're there at the young age of Haseeb, it's a little bit questionable.
Well, to be clear, I'm only there about half the year, so I'm not Seattle for more than I'm in Seattle. But I would argue that I'm a 2. I think there's no way that I'm at the same as.
Where's Caroline Ellison?
Oh, it's really high.
New York?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
on his scale.
based on her blog posts
Yeah, the blogs.
and
Yeah.
some of the things that
Yeah.
she wrote publicly,
But is she a 5 or 4?
4.5, 4.
4.5. I mean, the whole Chinese harem stuff was.
Oh yeah.
See, the thing is, like, I think mentally she might be like a 5, whereas like in terms of her actual behavior, she's like a 2. You know what I mean?
I don't know, perpetrating a fraud to the tune.
Well, but like perpetrating a fraud out of compliance toward your like a weird abusive boyfriend. I don't know. Like it's kind of
4.5.
kinda
I mean,
mid.
it's up there. That's
Okay.
It takes quite the personality to pull that off.
All right, fine. I'll take that. So what about Tom?
2.
2?
Yeah. Finland.
Okay.
He's wearing
You
he's
agree.
wearing an Arc'teryx shirt.
That's
so,
true. That's true.
you know,
Does that make me hinged?
that's like SF normcore.
Yeah.
That is quite. That's quite hinged. That's quite hinged.
Yeah.
Quite hinged closing choices. Okay, well, I'm hoping that this scale takes off, even though I don't totally understand it. But I'm sure everyone listening perfectly understood.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to one day. Do you guys remember like DGen score?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope somebody like on crypto Twitter takes this idea and actually like productizes it in some way and comes up with some way of like
Prediction market.
So I actually met the Dex Blue team
Yeah,
up in
Dex Blue.
DuneCon, and the team was there, and it was also kind of one of those things where DGen Score was supposed to be like a marketing tool for Dex Blue, which was like this Dex aggregator, but then it like took on this life of its own, like way beyond Dex Blue, which I don't know if it's still active or something, but yeah, I mean you're right. Like that was actually the product, not the Dex aggregator. So yeah, that was crazy. That was like a whole thing, and then
Yeah. You should be able to look at a wallet and figure out how unhinged they are.
That seems hard.
Yeah, it's like DGen score.
Yeah.
Permissionless universes are supposed to make it hard to do that, right?
Turns out, yeah, people put a lot of information on chain as well as online that lets you suss out all that stuff.
That's true. Well, you could have like a GPT model to actually determine this based on publicly available information. That would actually be a really interesting.
Actually, I want to know what ChatGPT thinks about this metric.
All right, well, we can go home and ask. All right, so let's get on to crypto news. Besides, obviously, this release of this new metric. So it hasn't been a super busy news week, but one of the news of the week is that there's been a string of layoffs. Obviously, this has been a theme of the last year, but it seems like there are a few stragglers in this layoff season. So OpenSea, the largest, at least at one time, the largest NFT exchange, right now, they just announced that they are laying off about 50% of their workforce. Credo, which is like a decentralized custody product, they also laid off 50%. Ava Labs, the company behind Avalanche, laid off about 12%. It is layoff season again. I don't know if anybody's seeing any dynamics that seem different. Is this like a new wave of layoffs? Is this tightening further, or is this just kind of delayed response to what otherwise has been a tightening of the belt?
I think it's delayed. I mean, if you think about it, and I don't know the innards of a company like OpenSea or Credo or Ava Labs, but it seems like you could have made this decision a year ago when you knew that the market was going to be incredibly challenging for the 12 months we just experienced. If you're someone like an OpenSea, you probably knew a year ago that volumes were down. We were entering, choppy waters. Almost everybody had blown up. I think that would have been the time to downsize. I feel like if you're doing it now, it's probably just waiting to see, if there was going to be a, earlier rapid turnaround. And I think any of those organizations could have made the call. I mean, I remember a year ago, I was like expecting most companies to start making major layoffs then, and some did.
Oh, yeah. Who would you put? Coinbase, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That camp.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think, a lot of even non-crypto tech companies obviously got hit with sort of, poor macro outlook, stock prices declining. But then weirdly, like those actually whipsawed and they started like hiring again within the same year. Like Meta was hiring again, Google was hiring again. But I think, for crypto companies, it is cyclical, but I think a lot of companies frankly just struggle with like PMF and revenue. And it's like, you can sort of hire a bunch of people and sort of assume be able to raise your next round or figure your business model. And when that doesn't really happen, like you have this enormous bloat, and hiring is it's like a one-way ratchet too. Like ideally, you think of your company like a machine, and it's like, okay, we, turn up the input when, times are good, and we turn it down when times are bad. But like people don't want to turn it down, right? It's like a really painful process. So inherently there's like some inefficiencies in the market, and that kind of gets shown now.
Yeah, the current batch of layoffs sort of feels, I agree that it's kind of late, but there's also this sort of weird thing of like, there's so much press around these layoffs. Like I feel like OpenSea, I kind of almost feel bad for them because like there's just so much, like all these stories of crazy bull market parties they had. I guess like disgruntled employees must be leaking them, but there's just like 20 stories I've seen in the last 2 days. And I kind of feel like they're getting a little too much shit. I don't feel like they kind of deserve as much as they're getting, but they're really getting thrown under a bus. And I think the excesses of 2021 oftentimes were like, because it's such an industry of like feast or famine, and in like the famine times, people are like extremely careful especially if they're just starting about hiring. And then like as soon as it feels like super cycle, not to use a banned word, people suddenly are like, oh my God, we just can't stop growing. So we're going to just, go gangbusters. And I think like it's different than the traditional, stereotypical tech company where you have this like, social media type of company where you just have this like straight up growth curve and like you can keep hiring into it. Like the fact that it's more financy and like has these like cyclical cycles means that you kind of have to be ready to do things like this. Yeah, to Tom's point, it's like it is kind of very painful to do. And I think, I as a founder definitely understand. Like it's not the thing that you're ready to do, especially. It's like a very hard thing to message. I definitely would say that I think people are very harsh on these companies for being late, and I'm not totally sure it's fully deserved. I agree that probably.
Yeah, there's a sense in which like when a company does layoffs, in a way, like they have already done the work to stem the bleeding, right? In a way, that's kind of like the problem was before they did the layoffs, where they were burning money, they were running, like things were totally unsustainable, and they were just delusional about the state of their industry, right? Like if you were OpenSea and you didn't do layoffs, like you said, a year ago, when volumes plummeted through the floor, fees were being cut down. There was basically like a price war between Blur and OpenSea just kind of like pretended it wasn't happening. Like that was when it was a problem. And after you normalize and say, okay, we're in a new world now, and we don't have crazy high margins. I mean, that was the craziest thing, which is that OpenSea was getting, what was it, 7.5%?
2.5%.
Sorry, 2.5%. They were getting 2.5% margin on selling JPEGs.
On crazy numbers.
Right? Like, yeah, on insane numbers selling JPEGs, and they had no competition. And they're not that company anymore.
Well, so a discussion I'd seen on the internet a lot was like, would OpenSea have stemmed the tide if they launched the token right after, just like Uniswap launched their token in response to SushiSwap? I'm kind of curious what you think. Do you think they could have?
I think the more important thing is like, what's the actual market size, right? And NFTs as a market collapsed for the most part. And this is why I actually have a lot of sympathy for OpenSea and pretty much any company in the space going through this, is because the market size itself can change underneath your feet incredibly quickly, right? If I'm selling SaaS software, the market for it's not going to like double or like halve in a year.
Not according to all the OpenAI killed my startup memes.
True. That's a fair counterpoint. But if I'm an OpenSea, the market for NFTs literally can 20x and then drop by 95% in a year.
Mm.
On
that means it's
both
flat.
directions. Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Yes, true.
Yeah. Can go up 20x and then drop 95%, right? And that's roughly what's happened. And like, that's a really like max difficulty environment for any company to operate, period. Like, you know, crypto in that sense is so much harder mode than most other industries. And so I have a lot of sympathy with them. I mean, like, you throw this at your standard San Francisco startup and it'd be like gut wrenching.
Yeah.
You know, they just struggle to get product market fit in the first place, generally.
Right.
And once they have it, they keep growing.
So it's interesting. You asked the question about like, okay, what would happen if OpenSea launched their token? I more or less agree. I don't think it would have mattered. It might have helped them in the short term.
Well, do you think
but-
like the competitive equilibrium we see now, where it's like Blur is like 60+% market share? Do you think that would be? Yeah. Where would you?
Possibly, but I mean, at the end of the day, like a token is just a subsidy, right? Like you can like OpenSea had raised the amount of capital that if they wanted to pay out subsidies, they could. Now instead, they ended up paying subsidies to their employees, I guess, and hiring a bunch of people who clearly were not needed to launch the current product, which is struggling, right? I'm like, what were all these people doing that OpenSea? Like, I feel like OpenSea has been remarkably uninnovative.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they've launched new product lines.
To Devin's credit, his tweets announcing the layoff said, "Everyone is telling us we're a follower, so we're not going to be a follower."
Yeah, and they
I thought
acknowledged
that
it.
was-
They acknowledged
that-
it,
yeah,
which I respect, right?
yeah.
Look, I respect I 100% respect the layoffs, and my heart goes out to the people who were affected by the layoffs because that fucking sucks. But it was right for the company to do the layoffs, is the point that I'm making. Now, one question that I've heard a lot, kind of looking back on the NFT market over the last year, because I think you raise an interesting perspective. I've heard from some people that they think the reason why, or a major contributor to the decline of the NFT market was Blur. I don't know if you guys have heard this argument before.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I've heard this.
Personally.
Okay. So I want to give the devil's advocate because this is my understanding of why people say this, because I also disagree. I don't think it makes sense, but this is what people have claimed, is that Blur is an NFT aggregator, but also has their own order book, so you can trade NFTs like on OpenSea directly on Blur.
See a prior chopping block up.
Also, full disclosure, we're investors in Blur.
We are investors in Blur. So Blur, one of the ways in which it initially got a lot of traction was by appealing to professional traders and making it seem more like you're trading tokens rather than trading NFTs. So kind of commoditizing NFTs a little bit more and encouraging people to sort of farm NFTs, provide more liquidity on NFTs, and increase the liquidity of NFTs in general, especially for floor NFTs. And the argument goes that before the market was very illiquid, and that made the market feel more like collecting. And when Blur increased the liquidity of these NFTs, it made them more like shitcoins, which made them more volatile, which made them subject to a bigger market cycle, which ultimately devalued NFTs on the whole by making them more like financial assets instead of like collectibles. That's the argument that people make for why this caused people to want to dump, and it made NFTs less valuable on the whole. That's the story. Why do you guys disagree with that story?
So, I mean, I think maybe going back to the token question, I think there's like actually a good sort of counterfactual here with Gem, which was one of the original NFT aggregators, which we're also investors in, which was acquired by OpenSea. And like Gem was a pure aggregator, right? So it didn't actually have its own order book, but it was already eating market share from OpenSea by the time it got acquired. So I think at face, I think that sort of speaks to the idea that just building a superior product in this market, you can win market share. It's not pure sort of network effects, which is, I think, what most marketplaces are based on. Or there's room for disruption in the market. I think for Blur, like I agree. I think that's already how most people were treating NFTs, right? Certainly there were people who were going to Sotheby's to buy a rare one-of-one art blocks. But for most people, they just wanted to trade them back and forth, right? That's the whole concept of floor, like, was invented in NFTs. There aren't floor Picassos. Like, that's not an idea.
Well, I
mean, there are.
Well, there are, but that was not a
Are there
point.
floor Picassos?
No. As
Any
in,
What is that, the
Picasso
etchings? The etchings are like
the
floor?
function minimum over set of prices exists.
Yes, I agree. But like that was not, if you go to like an art gallery website, they're not like, oh, here's the floor to get like a Twombly.
And they're
It's
not
like,
7,000 of them. right? So,
exactly.
Although prints might actually fit into that.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, I think NFT, it's almost sort of like you're meeting reality where this already existed in the minds of NFT traders, but no one wanted to come out explicitly and say it. And so here is just sort of pure, full accelerationist like NFT marketplace, come and get it. And like, this is kind of what you get as a result. But it was already effectively, I think, happening. This is just sort of meeting reality.
Well, the thing that didn't really exist prior to Blur was there was no bid side of the order book. So all the markets existed in basically an offer-only one-sided marketplace where it was like, okay, I'm going to list for sale different NFTs at different prices. And you only saw one side of the market, which was the offer side. And Blur, using their token, incentivized liquidity on the bid side for floors, but they built the bid side of the order book. So there was like, you can see for any project, well, here's the bid for a floor and what the amount of demand is. And in my mind, it created for the first time the ability for people to essentially liquidate at the floor easily. As opposed to listing at the floor and hoping that somebody would like lift the offer, they were able to actually sell into a bid. And I take that as something new. And when you hear people like talking about like, oh, it allowed anyone to sell their NFTs, which is why NFT prices fell, like there is a amount of truth to that, in that they functionally gave people the ability to offload a collection. You had significant holders of different collections. The first time able, yes, dump 100 at once, which was never possible before. You'd have to wait for there to be enough demand for people to buy 100. And this enabled someone for the first time to sell 100. And it did change the dynamic, I think, functionally. But, I don't think it would have had that big of an effect on prices. I think, at the end of the day, creating more liquidity for something is only good for it. And it's not like, the value of Bored Apes dropped in half because you could sell them more easily. The ability to sell something more easily also makes it more appealing to buy in the first place, knowing that
Yeah, that seems right to me. Is that like liquidity makes something more valuable than less valuable?
Yeah. And so like they strictly increased liquidity, like undeniably increased liquidity for NFTs. It is so much easier to buy and sell NFTs because of Blur than it was before. And maybe the first order effect of that is like a short term, like, wow, you can sell them and you never could do that. Therefore, price go down. But by fundamentally improving the liquidity for these assets, I think it makes them on an equilibrium basis more valuable. And so I think their story just got caught at the wrong time of, they got popular as pretty much the whole market for everything was collapsing.
Right.
Well, I will say one thing, at least like team wise, if you like compare the two teams, like OpenSea was like on the development side, like had like literally a lot of the best application level smart contract engineers, like people who wrote a ton of ERCs, but they were like not traders at all. Like if you ask them to like even make this argument about the offer and bid, like all of them would just be like, too much finance talk, go away. And so,
other than Nathan Chastain, I heard he was.
Well, yes. Well, sure. But I mean, I basically just think like the problem with the NFT market was that it initially started off like vibes only, right? It was like, oh, like, hey, everything's going to go up forever. So like, we don't need to think about market structure. Fuck that. Like, why do you need to offer one side of the market? Like, fuck the floor people, right? Like, the entire thing is going to go up. And OpenSea kind of like hung their hat on that for a really long time. And there were all these attempts at like disintermediating that. And then it just turned out that the right combination of token incentives and lending sort of worked in the favor of that. And I just feel like they were unwilling to accept the financialization of NFTs because they were so bought into the creator royalty thing, which is like obviously illusory and fake, as we all know.
Right. Yeah, it seems very true that like the character of the NFT market definitely changed. It became a lot more about floors. And the other thing too is that the sense that everyone had that the prices were going up and therefore the net worth was going up was also a little bit illusory, right? Like in an extremely illiquid market, you are not allowed to just mark your entire portfolio. I mean, this is the whole argument that we made about SBF and the bullshit accounting he was doing. Super illiquid market, you can't just mark your entire net worth to what the last trade was cleared at. You have to take a discount based on the cost of liquidating, right? And so if you have a big pile of floor punks or floor apes or whatever, and you're like, wow, I'm a 40 millionaire now. It's like, well, but you can't actually sell that without something like Blur. So the reality is that you may have had the illusion that you were richer at a certain time when you couldn't actually liquidate things in a timely manner. Like the reality of your net worth became real when Blur created that liquidity for you. Now, I agree with you, though, that there's the confounder of time, which is that as time went on, interest rates went up, crypto went down, all this stuff happened around the same time. And so it's hard to we can't really run it back and say, how would that crazy NFT bull market have played out differently?
But we can look at all the attempts at like doing what Blur did along the way, right? The gems, the pseudo swaps, and like they all missed some facet of the microstructure, but they were all like taking a hammer and trying to like chisel at it. And so there is a sense in which you can see that OpenSea never really they didn't really try to make defenses against it, other than maybe acquiring it, right? And that was sort of, to me, the thing that
I mean, they did in the very literal sense. They just weren't effective defenses, right?
Well,
I mean, they were trying to like block lists and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, or like
acquiring
supply side friendly than demand side friendly. And
yes.
In a up market, you want to be supply side friendly, right?
Right.
Because you need supply to get like inventory to make the kind of marketplace work. But then down market, it's a complete demand driven thing. And like, if you don't understand that, you're immediately going to just get completely.
So this is, I mean, I remember getting this argument with Laura, is that I've always believed that the demand side was more important than the supply side in NFTs. And that, like,
except during 2021.
I think even then, it's like when the celebrities were showing up to sell like random dog shit NFTs to people, it was because of the demand side. Like people, like the creators could make so little money anywhere else relative to the NFT world. They were going to show up and say, like, what do you want me to make? I will poop on a piece of paper and put it up if that's what you will pay, you know, like $5,000
Not on a
a pop
piece
for.
of paper, on a pointer.
That's right.
Yeah,
on a blockchain.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I guess like there is some truth to that, but a lot of the demand was driven also by A, speculation, and B, this narrative of like, this is the future of art, whatever.
Totally.
And, like,
and there's always some reflexivity between the two. It's never just one or the other.
And I just like, I would love to in hindsight, look at the portfolios of all the artists who like successfully sold then to find out if they're degen gamblers or they're just like sitting in stable coins. I would love to see like the relative portfolios of the NFT buyers versus the artists over time. Like that would be like the most amazing chart to ever see.
Look, as long as the artist didn't recycle it back into crypto, I would guess.
I kind of think a lot of them, more than you think.
I'm sure a lot of them.
I know some of them that really, I feel like they like, once they got ETH, they were like, ooh, I know I can gamble with this now. And it was like, it changed their psychology changed from like humble artists to like, I'm a really great investor. And I saw that trope at least 3 or 4 times.
Not good. Not good. Well, okay. Speaking of NFTs, there was another interesting story from the NFT world, which is there's an event called Apefest in Hong Kong, which is an event you can go to if you'd like to congregate with other holders of the Bored Ape Yacht Club Yuga Labs universe. And apparently there was some club. They were out clubbing, some rave, I don't know what, something. And apparently they had some UV lights that they were shining somehow in the overall presentation of this light show.
This is how you know Haseeb has never gone to a nightclub. He talks about the overall presentation of
I don't know. I didn't actually see any pictures of what it looked like. All I know is there were UV lights and photokeratopsis or something like that. Some kind of eye damage that apparently happened to a significant number of people who attended this, you know, like a small percentage of people who were at this club, I guess, event. Let's call it an event. Does that work? I think I'm a 1.5 after that explanation of a nightclub.
Yeah, you're going down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting close to a 1 now.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, all right. I think that's the story.
So I will say I have helped produce events that had, you know, projection mapping and other types of light shows. Oh. And I kind of did some, you know, played music at some of those things. And all I got to say is, how the fuck do you have disinfecting UV lights anywhere near this place? Like literally no venue. I've been to the most illegal ratchet venues in the US and none of them have anything close to this. How is this fancy Hong Kong venue for like people who have to spend $100K to get in effectively or whatever the price of a Bored Ape is now? How the fuck does that place have this and like no checks for that? I'm telling you, like really shit venues never have anything like this. This has got to be one of the most ridiculous things. Like, I almost feel like, I hate to sound like Reddit conspiratorialist, but I kind of feel like someone did this. So it's like,
you think someone sabotaged?
I think it's sabotage.
The Bored Ape meetup?
Yeah.
Do you think it's World of Women? Who could it have been?
I don't know. Machi?
You think it was the CryptoPunk?
No, I'm kidding. Machi, please don't come after me.
All right.
But like, I just mean like, clearly it's someone like that. How the fuck does that happen? That's like, I've never heard of anything like that happen in nightlife. And I've been to a lot of fucking venues.
Well, I assume the lights weren't done by the venue itself.
Usually they are.
Yeah. I don't know. I saw one tweet that could be totally misinformation, but it was like somebody said, oh, I found a photo of where the lights were being used incorrectly. And they were being used to create a blacklight effect on some like Bored Ape art.
I see. So specifically for some NFT presentation
Yes,
thing.
specifically for these like cardboard cutouts of like,
Wow, the social Darwinism
covered.
of Bored Ape holders really is even more true.
Darwinism is a very good, very appropriate
So,
analogy
yeah.
for this as well.
So it's possible it was just like part of like an art like exhibit
Yeah.
or a package.
But
of,
I'm saying
and-
okay, so if you do projection mapping, so projection mapping is like I have a 3D space, I map the space and I'm projecting lights on it and I'm attaching it to the sound source so that the light's moving, the projection is moving with the sound. You bring your own stuff there, but like almost all the venues check like what lights you have and what you're like, even the really dog shit illegal venues will be like, you can't use certain types of lights. So I'm like shocked that no one said anything.
I don't even really understand like the idea of Apefest. Like if you go to Breakpoint, great, you love the Solana vision, the religion, you're into it. If you go to, DEF Connect, DEF CON, great, you're like in the Ethereum. Like what do the apes stand for? Like what do you like what is the purpose of the
You
Apefest?
stood for having made money in 2021 by accident.
You could go to a bunch of crypto conferences and do that. Like, and I'm guessing actually a lot of ape holders have lost money as well.
That is true. Yeah.
You go to Apefest and it's like what, like,
The community of morons. Like I don't know what else. Like other than that, there's like nothing.
The weird
else
thing too is
to say.
I saw some photos of people there, and it's all men, and I'm like, why would you?
It is the moronic incel club that they should change from Bored Ape Yacht Club to that.
All right. Well, we were just talking about Solana. Interestingly, so Solana has been ripping. It's up something like 3x this year. It's up to 45. I think I saw as of today. It's been outperforming pretty much almost everything else in the top 100. It's been very impressive, the run up. A lot of people were afraid during the FTX liquidation that the FTX estate was going to be selling a bunch of Solana, and that was originally perceived to be bearish. But apparently it's selling less than people expected, and a lot of their Solana is locked up for much longer than was understood. So Solana has just gone nuts. It's up more than 2x in the span of about a month. So there was, of course, just Breakpoint, which is the big Solana gathering. I think it was in Lisbon. Correct?
No, Amsterdam.
Oh, Amsterdam, sorry. It was in Amsterdam. You were there. Tell us about your observations from Amsterdam. What was the vibe?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of am. I know how Tom was just like, oh, if you go to X conference, you're like part of the X tribe, and what. I don't.
ruins of Solana.
I'm
crime.
just
Yeah,
no.
definitely Solana tribe.
I have no maxi-ism. I just kind of I think every ecosystem has its pros and cons, and there's like obviously certain things that some of them do better than others.
What are
but
the pros of the Cardano ecosystem?
they wrote the first paper that proved why Bitcoin has achieved safety and liveness in 2015.
Good job, Cardano community.
Yes,
Well
unfortunately, everything else maybe not so good. But okay, I think the interesting thing about Solana is for the first time ever since 2018 or 2019, did I meet like developers who are like, you sent a transaction or wrote code for the legacy platforms, where in 2018, it was like all the ETH developers, like the Hayden from Uniswaps of the world, were like, I've never sent a Bitcoin transaction, but like, of course I sent ETH transactions. And at the Solana conference, unlike, say, like some of the other L1s, I've met people who are like, I've never sent an ETH transaction. I've never sent a Bitcoin transaction, but I've used Solana and I write Solana. And I was like shocked at how many of those.
And what do they do on Solana?
So weirdly, it's like really crappy NFTs, like really crappy, like cheap, but crappy NFTs. It's a lot of like, so the thing is Solana doesn't have many tokens. So actually it had a ton of tokens in 2021, 2022. Those were all the Sam coins as described in the trial, all worthless and zero. And so then Solana kind of had this like, clearly there was no other token other than Sol realistically, like there are a few of them. But Solana's staking yield was actually quite high. They still have relatively high inflation, but they didn't have, and they had this kind of weird competitive staking market. But recently, sort of Jito has sort of, disclosure, we're investors in it, has sort of like started to really kind of take over the market there. So I think there's a much more accessible Solana yield, which has helped make the ecosystem a bit more, have a little more like DeFi related stuff working out. And what was interesting is a lot of the projects that I would call like the cockroaches, they like maybe raised in 2021, they didn't pivot to AI. They didn't die due to FTX taking all their funds, which
Remarkably hard.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things you could have fucked up very easily, and like being in the bubble, you very high chance of dying. But the projects that survived, like the margin drift, Jito, etc., they all are all getting ready, so it seemed, and some of them had announcements of tokens to start having tokens. So I think there's also this thing where people are getting ready for the retro airdrops of Solana. And I think whoever survived is sort of like the cockroach that survived the nuclear explosion. And they seem to be like kind of doing well. So there's that. The second thing is like, I've never, in Ethereum conferences and hackathons, you oftentimes meet really awesome developers, but like you don't meet that many who are like, I want to work on payments, which, it sounds like the most boring application, right? You maybe used to in 2019. But now if you go, it's like everyone wants to do ZK identity. They want to do some like kind of complicated type of thing. But in Solana, there's a lot of like, we want to do like USDC payments in like a weird wallet for Zimbabwe. Like it's it's actually like, it reminds me of Ethereum hackathons in 2019, whereas Ethereum hackathons now are way more focused on higher end technology ideas. And so I think there's kind of this like baseline of people who just are completely coming new to crypto, who were only brought into crypto by 2021, and Solana happened to be the place they went, and they have no, I guess they don't talk to other people who are in other parts of crypto, and so they're just in that ecosystem. So it's like the only L1 that I feel like has this completely organic, unique ecosystem, because like the EVM L1s, so the ones that are compatible with Ethereum, they had a lot more like founders who just like moved around, right? It's like Trader Joe moved from Avalanche to Arbitrum, and then they had more success in Arbitrum. So then like the EVM people didn't really have much, there's no stickiness other than ETH mainnet, because they all deployed eventually to ETH mainnet. But in Solana, like
there's nowhere else to go.
There's nowhere else to go. But like if you look at other ecosystems, I didn't go to the NEAR conference, which is right now. Otherwise I would have been able to give a comparison, but it doesn't feel, there is like this real notion of people go in and this is their first experience, and it reminds me so much of 2018 Ethereum, where people are like, I bought some shitcoin in 2017 and then I like decided to work on a project. Like the Solana wealth effect of like, I bought Sol and I like made a bunch of money and now I'm just gonna like work on Solana projects. The wealth effect is real there. And
so that's a little bit curious to me too, because it must be just sort of time weighted that most people, even in Solana, have lost money, right? Because like it moved so rapidly and it had such a dramatic ascent, both in terms of price and in terms of notoriety. When it shot all the way to 200 and then gradually was kind of taking its way down. And that was like when Sam was at the top of his empire and he was really pushing the Solana narrative. It must be that most people have actually not made money on net, right? We're more or less in a bear.
Yeah, but my point is like I'm looking at the conditional distribution of the ones who did.
Oh, fair enough.
And those are the ones who are. That my point is that's a large enough subset.
Yeah. So I get it for NFTs. I get it for a lot of other things, but for developers, it seems surprising to me that like where I made money is coupled with where I am developed, because a lot of people buy a lot of tokens.
One way of thinking about this, which is slightly different, which is where I made money means I can quit my job, my normal dev job, for like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And so I've bought myself like a few years of like not doing things. And that thing that bought me that, I spend time reading a lot of the docs, I spend time meeting people at these conferences, and then I start writing code for it. And I think there is this effect that Solana seems to be the only ecosystem I can for sure know. Like I said, I didn't go to NEAR's conference, so I don't know right now. But Solana definitely has this. There is really clearly this like whoever survived is like doing well. Like they're still working on stuff. It's like doesn't feel like zombie land, which is like a very unique thing to them as far as I can tell. Whereas like, I think in other L1 ecosystems, it's usually what happens is like when things crash, it becomes extremely adversarial and dog eat dog, and everyone's trying to undercut each other, and then like they kind of kill their ecosystem, right? I think you've seen this in a bunch of other places. I won't name them so their armies don't go after me. But you've seen that kind of like the bear market leads to like all the projects fighting with each other, and then there's a zero sum thing, and like the ecosystem. And Solana somehow doesn't have that zero sum mindset as much. It's like very
Well, I think all that zero sum mindset was encapsulated into SBF.
yes,
And he was defenestrated all at
and
once.
everyone who's survived is like, oh, we survived despite that, and so they're
Right.
way less. They don't have
It is definitely the most incredible story in the history of L1s is Solana's reversal from being basically this more or less exchange chain of FTX and being completely kind of under their thumb and subject to their distribution, surviving the biggest fraud basically in the last decade, being at the center of their blockchain, and still nevertheless.
I mean, it
coming
was
out
their DAO hack,
victorious.
right? And if you
Yeah.
survive it, if you I feel like almost like religious texts, a chain
This is so
needs
true.
to have like this
Yeah.
one like Gilgamesh flood moment.
Totally,
And,
totally.
and
like the dark night of the
that's
soul.
the thing that
push
keeps
through.
you, yeah. And everyone who survives that's like the branding of like you've made it into the real league of
The real league.
I don't know what
real
else to call
L1
it.
league.
The real L1 league. Like, but like
How many L1s are real?
4.
I don't know. That's a good question. It's hard to say. Like, I definitely think Solana makes it to that. It's like they really somehow the stripes from that nuclear extinction level event, and the way people are so optimistic and are not zero sum about like just like, oh, there's like this much there's this much TAM in the ecosystem. Like I'm gonna try to kill my competitor over it. Is very surprising. Like it really is like ETH 2018, 2019. And I think like you can get mad at them for like not being able to run a full node, whatever. Maybe they don't have light clients yet, but they're trying, whatever. The technical, like all the people fighting on Twitter about this shit, I'm always like, yeah, but like arguably Ethereum wasn't as easy to run in 2018 either, right? Like there's so much in stuff that went into it to make it what it is. And obviously it is a really amazing place because it's survived, it has all these assets, has all this liquidity. But I do feel like you have to give Solana a lot of respect. Like you have to really treat it like it's earned its stripes. And I think like that's something that people sort of miss in the L1 war, right? And yeah, you know, like I said, their DeFi, you know, another argument you see a lot on Twitter is their DeFi TVL is so small, and like how could they really kind of be a thing? And it's like, yeah, they have no fucking tokens. The only tokens are really Sol. Like everything is Sol, right? And so, but they've somehow still been able to like not go to zero despite that. And you have to give that. I don't know. I think that this extinction event thing is almost like a necessary thing. It's
Right.
like, why do people like who follow religions like religion is like the narrative always has some like hardship hero's journey type thing, right? And somehow this is also true for these chains.
What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with sort of the story of being forged in a crucible and sort of coming out the other side. Like that's true for like a lot of companies as well. And I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying around like, if you're part of the Solana tribe, you follow the Solana God. It doesn't matter if you can't run a full node. Like that's not part of our religion. That's not part of our code of ethics. Like that's somebody else. I think going back to what you were saying though around like what's happening on chain, I'm still like a little bit confused by because like when I look, it's like, okay, I mean, frankly, you know, even a lot of the top project activity, like they do have tokens, right? Like Marinade, Drift, Sol, like Orca, Solend. And it's like, okay, so people are doing, like Jito's obviously been, you know, ripping in terms of TVL. It makes sense. Like it's a very interesting play on sort of the whole MEV space, the LST space. But like it's sort of like, you know, building a great operating system, but there's no applications. And it's like, okay, like what else are people doing? Like what else is happening? Like, I think that's kind of thing that's missing for me.
I think the weird thing to me actually about the 2021 like bull market stupidity Solana was like people were raising for like some of these public raises raised like $80 to $100 million for where they sold you in-game items before the game was made as like their raise. And like that stuff is obviously dog shit scam, whatever. But like this AAA game on Solana thing was like just kind of obviously a dumb fucking thing. But it does feel like people are focusing way more on these like consumer social payments stuff. That was like the number one thing that I observed.
Honestly, I'm so traumatized by the term AAA. Like I've heard anything that any game I've ever been pitched has always been described as AAA.
I think I will fundamentally.
I'll settle for a double A game.
Yeah, I'll settle for a single A, to be honest.
I will say the
What
following.
a B game for once.
I will say the following. I've talked to a lot of people who are LPs who this week and who are in crypto, and the number one thing that I ask them is, I'm like, oh, like, what do you think about like funds, like gaming specific funds? And they're just like, yeah, you know, like you got to wait 5 to 7 years for seeing if crypto will make a real AAA game. And I just fundamentally don't think that such a thing exists for crypto. I think crypto is the world of 500 shitty games. There's going to be tons of Angry Birds.
100%. Yeah, that's the other thing that somehow I think people don't understand about the gaming industry is that it's not primarily about AAA games. AAA games are
crazy
like
mobile games in China that like,
yeah,
get,
absolutely.
like,
the most of the
100 million
revenue in this industry does not come from AAA games. AAA games are just the most appealing to look at, but the games that actually make a lot of money and monetize extremely well are often very stupid and not visually impressive.
I don't know if it's fair to say the majority of the revenue, but you're right it's a lot. These are very, very sizable portions, and by user base, absolutely.
Well,
like,
I just
that's
think
what most people think of when they think
they're
of games.
more.
Right.
It's
Bejeweled.
much easier to do that on chain,
Totally.
with crypto, than to try to do like the entire like that. That's
I should say rather the ROI.
Yes.
Rather than
Yeah.
the ROI.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
like when you're building a AAA game, you spend an enormous amount of money and you make an enormous amount of money and you have a small margin. It's like movies, right? It's like Hollywood.
Yeah, you spend $200 million to make a game that you bring in 1.5 billion, and there's a lot of marketing costs and a lot of costs. And
I mean, that's a smashing success if you actually do
Yeah.
that, right? But like for a lot of these games, they spend $2 billion and they make $2.1 billion.
Well, I think the thing for AAA is like it makes a lot more sense in the like holding company style structure, like the Tencent owning a bunch of different studios
Right.
and like de-risking it that way.
Right.
But the idea of a venture equity investment in a game just sounds
This is a
so
new
dumb.
thing.
Like
This is a very new thing. This really arose basically in the last like 3 years.
it doesn't make any sense to me. Like you're taking something that's already really high risk and making it a riskier investment via this equity investment versus like something where you risk share across multiple.
It's not even that. It's also that, you know, if you are Tencent or one of these game distributors, you have there are a lot of synergies across your portfolio. There are a lot of things that you can do in order to make sure that you're using your market information from other properties that you have to kill projects early, to, you know, shift capital from here to there. A lot of the gaming VCs don't have that, which is why, generally speaking, a lot of the gaming VC investments that have been successful are not AAA. They're games that, yes, you want to have a portfolio and you want diversification or whatever, but they're lower cost games that can also be really high margin and high grossing. So it's just like, it's different. So like, I think with the advent of these really mega gaming funds, the only way they can make these economics work is these AAA bets, right? Where they bet huge amounts of money at pre-launch games with just basically on designs and teams, which is traditionally not the way that gaming investing was ever done.
Well, I think an interesting example of this, which I only heard this week, so forgive me for not knowing exactly the names of this, but the number one app store game in China right now is this game called Kiss or Slap. And it's like you have like a virtual character in this like metaverse thing, like, but not really that high tech. And you have to pay, you go up to people and you have to pay to kiss or slap them. And then you know, if someone does that to you, then you get the right to do it to them back for free. And it's like something extremely stupid. It's like, but it's apparently the number one thing, and like it's making a ton of revenue by getting people to pay for the right to for the virtual character to kiss or slap another virtual character.
This sounds great.
Yeah,
but this thing is making like tons of revenue.
Crypto.
Like
this needs crypto.
5 to 10. Exactly. This makes more sense for crypto. This is like that. That's so easy to do on chain. That seems like a perfect game. Like this is what I'm saying. I just this AAA thesis was just like I thought I was just I don't understand and I'm an idiot in 2021. I was listening to everyone pitch you these fucking stupid AAA gaming funds, and I honestly, in hindsight, I'm like, phew, thank God I never like fell for that.
Well, so my thing about gaming, and I've been saying this for many years now, is that I do think crypto gaming will be big, but I think it will be difficult to invest into.
The kiss and slap.
Because it'll be like the kiss and slaps of the world, right? It'll be like kind of gross.
it takes off before anyone even...
Not only that, but it's like the kind of stuff that I would be too embarrassed to invest into and explain to my LPs what I just did, you know? And it's like I suspect that the first crypto game that becomes really big, like not Axie Infinity, but like even bigger than that, is going to be described as a social problem. It's gonna be the kind of thing people write op-eds about, and like they want like, how can I get parental controls to stop my kids from like? It's gonna be one of those types of things.
Mr. Slap 2, Return of the...
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
return of the slap.
Return of the Slap.
Slappers only.
The other thing that I think a lot about crypto games is that I think there's a big intersection between crypto gaming and gambling, which again is like
Yes.
kind of dirty, kind of gross.
But this
dirty
kiss
word.
and slap thing is almost gambling. Like,
Is it?
Doesn't sound like
well, because
gambling.
I have to like pay for the right to slap, and I think there's some.
That's
there's
a
some,
service.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like slightly like sex work, actually, if
Yeah,
I have to think about it.
yeah.
It's
Slaps
got-
tradable? Are they securities? Is that the is there a slap
That's a good
exchange?
question.
Yeah, actually, are there
To be
any
fair,
add-ons for
I
slaps?
only heard this secondhand, and someone
You
showed
haven't
me on their
played.
phone. I haven't played.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to download this later.
We got to.
Yeah, it might be Chinese only. That's the
Yeah, it
problem.
might be Chinese only. Yeah. I saw it on someone's phone. It was actually at the Solana conference. Someone was from China. Was like, "Here's this."
Wait. What? In what context were they explaining to you kiss and slap at Breakpoint?
Because I was like, oh, because they were like, oh, we're working on Solana like games. I was like, oh, cool. What are the?
Were they
games?
building a kiss or slap clone?
Well, basically the hackathon project was something.
Can you introduce them to us?
Yeah. It was like something. That was
I think
like
I have a new thesis on crypto gaming is kiss or slap.
This is what they were like saying they were going to do. I didn't stay the whole week, so I didn't see the hack.
Somebody who actually knows this game is going to explain to us how incredibly stupid our understanding
yeah.
of this
I think I get it. You have avatars, and I assume they either look kissable or slappable,
Yeah.
and they live in this little world, and you can go up to someone and you can pay money to have your avatar kiss the other avatar
Yes.
or to slap the other avatar. And there's probably like a news feed, like you got slapped, you know?
I agree. There's a sex work.
This is why Robert's a one
Yeah.
on the unhinged scale.
Yeah.
It's just very earnestly.
Yeah.
I think you can go around and kiss or slap people.
Right.
Yeah, no, nothing weird. So, okay, this other part of my thought, I don't even know if it's a thesis, but a thought about crypto gaming. So I think many people know, back in a former life, I used to be a professional poker player. And one thing that's interesting to me about casinos is that if you go into a casino, like if you'd gone into a casino 50 years ago, or even 70 years ago, and you go into a casino today, the games that you see available in casinos are basically the same. Right now, if you go to a slot machine, like, okay, there's video and there's sound and there's like all this new stuff, new IP, but like the actual mechanics of the games are the same.
Yeah. Blackjack hasn't changed.
Exactly. Why has there been so little innovation in casino games when there's been so much innovation in every other form of gaming?
Well, I can answer this with another simple analogy.
Please.
I like chess. Chess hasn't changed in a really long time. Just because you can make a new game doesn't mean it's going to be more fun.
What about like bullet chess and like speed chess and all these things? I mean, these are pretty new.
I agree. Same game, slightly different approach to playing the same game.
Right.
You could have speed blackjack. You only have 3 seconds.
Sure. I would.
Latency is like kind of a bad mechanic for games, I feel like, because like it's not like people like the faster play sometimes. It's like it works until a point, but then if it's too fast, I feel like people just
I think with chess it does help because bullet chess is very popular now, right?
Yeah, it's super popular.
Yeah.
Well, it's because like if you sit down for an hour.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
play
It's like the
20
kind of thing you can play in the train, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's a big part of why
that's my
mobile
point.
games
Is like
work so well.
crypto is made for games you can play on the train. It should only be that. Like forget this like
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
like esports dog shit.
Or
stuff.
sit down for 3 hours and have this immersive life experience or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, like, yeah, there's a place
I
for
just
that.
don't think. I think the ayahuasca trip on chain shouldn't come from the game. It should come from other things.
Well, so my high level theory is that big part of the reason why there's so little innovation in casino games is because casinos are seen as gross, and the most brilliant creative people don't want to work there. They don't want to create casino games. They want to go work for Rockstar and for Blizzard and whatever because they see that as being a sort of more respectable place to create these really immersive, fascinating.
I think
creative
that's the Western
experiences.
view. I'm not sure that's.
You go to a casino in Macau, it's the same thing.
No. I just mean like I'm not. Would you say that like a Chinese graduate of like Tsinghua, let's say like CS graduate,
Yeah.
like deciding between one or the other,
Mm.
would you say that their probability of choosing one or the other is the same as the Western one? I don't think so. I think they're much
What are you
more.
talking about? I think like in China, gaming is huge.
But they would be fine going to the casino gaming too, right? No?
I don't think so. I think it's the same thing. I think it's probably even worse there, where like your parents are gonna be like, "Oh my God, my child instead of going to this great top tier tech company, instead they're going and working for some shady casino, right? Like you lose so much.
But you wouldn't really be working for the casino. You'd be working for the people who make the machine.
Right, which is not that much better. That in some way, I think what crypto enables is like uniting that very kind of open canvas of innovation from gaming with the degenerate, disgusting appeal to the basest human instincts that casinos do.
Kissing and slapping.
Kissing and slapping, exactly.
Well, I think there's like just an EV calculation here too, right? Like, 20 years ago, you're very limited in terms of, hey, if you want to go work for like MGM, what you can actually get out of this thing, right? Like it was already public. It's like limited to this very thing. Like there aren't, gambling video games in 1990 or whatever. Now it's a very kind of different story. Like we actually have some kind of attempts at doing sort of digital casinos. So maybe sort of the calculus is changing of, oh, there's actually a bigger TAM if I want to go invent a new casino game. But, again, to your point, like there just wasn't enough of an amazing outcome for me if I'm brilliant and smart and motivated to like go work for sort of existing gambling companies.
Tom is
Here's
a rollbit maxi confirmed.
Yeah, right.
I'll take a demand side approach to this. I don't know how many people want to play a game that was just made up, where they don't know the odds, they don't know how it works. You feel like you're going to get ripped off. Roulette and blackjack and craps and these things that have been around casinos since like the 50s, I think haven't changed for a reason, because like enough people know what they are and how they work that there's already this like social knowledge about these games. Slots have innovated like crazy, right? In terms of like what's happening on the slot machines, and they've gotten more loud and more addicting and more fun and all of these things. But the structure really hasn't changed at all. Like, I don't think there's a job description available at MGM, like invent brand new game that like doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I was actually having this
I don't think it's
conversation
going to go very far.
with a friend of mine over dinner who, first of all, he started off the dinner, he was talking about casinos and we were talking about roulette. And he's like, oh yeah, like, in the UK we have one green and the US you have two greens. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he was like roasting me for that. And I'm like, 2 0. I'm like, I've never played roulette in my life. Why the fuck would I play roulette? Like, that sounds like the most boring use of my time ever. Just complete negative EV randomness. Like
They're all negative EV. Though.
Yeah, but at least
Except poker. Except poker.
true. But
Except
at least
poker.
with like blackjack, there's some fun. There's some agency. I'm just like fucking literally just like flip a coin and like lose. Like that sounds terrible. But the second thing that you brought up was sort of the lottery and the fact that it's one of the oldest forms of gambling. Every country has one. They're almost all nationalized and they're massive. Like Spain has El Gordo, which is like the national lottery. People form these pools. It's just like everybody loves the lottery, and like every country has the lottery. But there's not really been
It's just a form of taxation on the poor, though, realistically.
Sure. But I think the thing that I was also thinking about is like, I don't know that many like young people who are like buying Powerball tickets. Like, my dad likes buying Powerball tickets, like and doing the whole thing. It's fun, but like, I don't get the sense
Young
that
people buy NFTs.
yeah, that's
There you go.
their lottery ticket.
Powerball.
And so I mean, you do see like
Someone should make
forms
an
of
NFT called Powerball.
You didn't. That's not financial advice.
Yeah, to be clear.
You do see forms of gambling popping up elsewhere, though, right? People love like loot boxes and like, okay,
Yes.
So you have stuff like that, but it doesn't. It's isomorphic, but it just looks different.
And that's why it's getting tamped down so aggressively, is because people know that this stuff is crack for human beings.
Yeah.
No matter where you are, no matter what age you are, like there are obviously a lot of randomization mechanics in games. And the reason why they're there is because they are fun and they appeal to the whatever it is, the part of our brain that loves randomness and variable reward ratio interactions. It's really, really powerful. And if you combine that with a rich game, like if I was playing Pokemon, and instead of just like, oh, I'm making things, whatever, but there's also fucking loot boxes and I can potentially make money and I have to deposit more money in order to like go cash them. Like there's such a rich design space with games that have real attachments for people beyond just, I go to the casino and I flip the roulette wheel and maybe I win, maybe I lose. That design space is definitely very constrained. And it's constrained in large part by sort of the optics of it and explicitly by regulation. And that's where I think we will see something weird in the design space introduced by crypto that's not just let's disguise a game, or rather, let's disguise a Ponzi scheme as a game. We did that a bunch of times in 2021, and that works because people love Ponzi schemes. Ponzi schemes are very fun. They're the oldest form of gambling.
Okay, so they're very fun for people on what level of the Unhinged score?
I think actually zero.
I actually would
I
make the meme of like the like Ponzi scheme is like the like 4 or 5, like
No, I think like -2 to 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
range.
Ponzi schemes, like normal people do Ponzi schemes. That's why there's so restrictive regulation on them in places like China, where they're like, we have to stop these Ponzi schemes from existing because everybody would want to play
All
it.
of society gets caught up in it.
Right, exactly. And there's just a huge deadweight loss from having these things naturally arise in the world.
Right. I mean, there's also, if you zoom out, like other Ponzi-like things that all of society gets caught up in, like tech bubbles and real estate bubbles.
Totally.
And it's not isolated to one specific implementation.
Yeah, everything's a Ponzi if you squint enough. And part of the reason for that is just like humans have no real good predictive power on like longer term growth rates, so they have to make up a narrative for one and then use short term investment to pump it.
There's this one bumper sticker I often quote that was I think somebody had this bumper sticker after the .com crash, and the bumper sticker said, "Please God, give me one more bubble. I'll know what to do this time."
Yeah.
And that I think is the apotheosis of why Ponzi schemes are universal.
But you could argue that nature itself is sort of a Ponzi scheme because what's the motive for reproducing so that you have like progeny that
Nature is the Ponzi scheme. Tarun 2023.
Yeah, we finally have like capped off the chopping blocks philosophical, extremes.
But it is right. Like, why does
everyone else is reproducing?
Why do
so you're gonna get
phylogeny
diluted. You have to stake and to keep your ownership.
Why
stake.
do phylogeny trees keep growing exponentially
It's
versus
so true.
right? And like
It's so
until
true.
they use all
But
resources.
where's the collapse
collapse is when
going?
all the resources are gone.
Well, but that's like Malthusian, right? But we're not. We've clearly exited that.
We have
that
only
Ponzi
sort
scheme.
of,
We've,
only sort
we've
of.
escaped the Ponzi scheme.
No.
Also, we stopped having so many kids. So like global population is
But
going to
you-
contract.
as long as
we
the
solved the
average
Ponzi
is
scheme. We somehow made it a never-ending.
we did the
game.
Bitcoin inflation deflation schedule.
Exactly. No tail emission. No
Get
tail.
out now.
Galton Watson
That's
tree
right.
that's
right.
finite.
It was a beautiful way to end it. That's it. Thanks everybody. We'll be back next week.